This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger. A few weeks back, we published a video on all the cars killed off in North America for 2020 so far. This is one of them. Our spotlight is on this 2020 Ford Fusion Titanium plug-in hybrid. Now, this has gone through a slight name change for the 2020 model year. Before, Ford was using Energi to denote a plug-in hybrid vehicle that was on the Focus, the C-Max, and even this Fusion, but for some reason for 2020 they've dropped it. But it is interesting to note that something like the owner's manual still says that it is an Energi in some places and a plug-in hybrid in others. Now, I don't know why they've done it, maybe just to make it easier for the regular consumer to understand that this is a plug-in hybrid and maybe not a full electric, but regardless. We're going to be talking about what this car has to offer and everything you might need to know if you're in the market for a mid-size sedan that happens to be a plug-in hybrid. Now, you can get this as a regular hybrid and a gas-only model. This one uses a 2-liter Atkinson cycle inline-4 engine, produces 141 horsepower, 129 pound-feet of torque. When you add in the electric motor, you've got 188 horsepower, and you can go up to 195 horsepower if you're in charge depletion mode. Now, it doesn't change the overall torque on this, but it's still good enough for what you need on a daily basis. This is a 9 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, smaller than what we've seen on some of the other plug-in hybrids that we've tested, much smaller than the Honda Clarity, and a little bit smaller than the Kia Optima. But price is power when it comes to this vehicle, because it is about the same price as a non-plug-in hybrid mid-size sedan, and that's before you factor in any of the incentives or rebates that you get with this car. Now, one of the things that you'll need to know is the cargo capacity in the trunk. It is significantly less than the regular Fusion, 220 liters less than the regular Fusion, because the battery pack is in the back seat there, so you lose out on space in the trunks. But the interior space is identical to the other Fusion models available. It is also 233 kilograms heavier, so the electric motor helps to offset that weight difference. And there's a 10.5 liter smaller fuel tank on this, but you will get probably about the same mileage as you would get on the regular Fusion, but you've got the added benefit of the electric, so if you're doing a lot of in-town stuff, you won't be using any fuel. Now, this vehicle is essentially fully loaded. There's only two options that you can get, and we've got both of them. $100 for the engine block heater, and then another $550 for this Alto Blue paint. I think it looks really good. It's like a dark blue, but sometimes looks a little green. I really like it. Base MSRP for this vehicle is $39,790 Canadian. This vehicle does qualify for the $2,500 Canadian government rebate on IZEVs, and you also get the $4,000 Quebec rebate if you're buying this vehicle. On top of the fact that you can get good incentives from Ford on these vehicles, a couple weeks ago it was $7,000 off. Right now, as we're filming this on the 21st of July 2020, they're offering an extra $5,000 manufacturer rebate. So you can get this car for, about $33,000, $34,000 all in with taxes. Not a bad price. But how does it compare to some of the other plugins that we've tested? Now, it's true that we've done a number of plug-in hybrids on this show before. It's what we're going to be focused on moving forward, along with the classic car stuff based on your feedback. But let's talk about the cars we have tested, especially in this segment, because we've done a number of them that just don't really compare to this. The 2020 Hyundai Ioniq, that is a vehicle we're going to be having in a few months. It's a compact. The Chrysler Pacifica hybrid that we did, it's a minivan. And then even the Prius Prime, it's again a compact vehicle. So there are a number of vehicles that you could buy, probably about the same price, but if you're looking for the interior space, maybe not so much the trunk space, then the two most direct competitors would be the Kia Optima plug-in hybrid that we did. Base MSRP for that for 2020 is $45,995. They do have two trims, the EX and the EX Premium. And again, that has a 9.8 kilowatt hour battery, so a little bit more. You can get about 4 to 5 kilometers more range for a full charge. It only uses a 6-speed automatic transmission, but it had a lot more power, 202 horsepower combined with 276 pound-feet of torque combined with the gas and electric system. And then we've got the 2020 Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid. Again, that was a vehicle we were supposed to feature a little while ago, but because of everything that was going on, it was canceled. We do hope to still get into it, but the top-end touring hybrid that we featured comes at $44,990 Canadian. It uses a 17 kilowatt-hour battery with a CVT, and total power is 212 horsepower, 232 pound-feet of torque. So you have more power when it comes to that one, and you've got a much larger battery. We figure we can do about 80 to 85 kilometers fully electric without it shutting off. And that's what we tested last year with the 2019. So those are a little bit pricier. They have a little bit more power and they have larger batteries. But again, it comes down to price for this one and ultimately what you want. I have to say that the Ford Fusion is a very handsome car. It is disappointing that Ford has decided to kill this vehicle off because it just looks so good. I really like it. Overall though, it looks exactly like a regular Fusion. The only thing to note, the trunk is kind of weird. When you open up the back of it, there's a lot of trunk that obviously you can't use because of the batteries. But one thing you'll notice on any Fusion is there's tons of extra trunk width to it they don't actually need. It's like almost a foot of thickness just to bulk up the exterior look of this vehicle. Strange design. The other thing I wasn't 100% sold on was the charging port for this vehicle. It feels a little flimsy. You push the button and it swivels out, but this feels very prone to breaking. Now, I assume the reason they've gone with this approach is to avoid it folding out and being broken off by somebody walking into it. So this does take up less real estate. The problem is though, it just feels very flimsy. Overall though, the Ford Fusion has a lot to offer if you're in the market for a mid-size vehicle. Because of the pricing, if you're looking at the sort of direct competitors, as I mentioned, Kia Optima, maybe Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, any of the other mid-sized cars, not necessarily the plug-ins, then this comes out on top in terms of price with the added benefit of having that plug-in hybrid system. Sure, the inside maybe isn't the most modern and it doesn't have all the technology. You do have most of the safety tech like adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring, a backup camera, though the quality is not that great, and rear cross traffic alert. You're missing out on some things like a 360-degree camera, maybe a more modern interior setup, a head-up display, and other technology like that. But again, for the price, it's really not bad. But overall, it does a really good job. And I'm telling you, if you aren't considering the Ford Fusion as your next sedan, you really should. There's a lot to go on with it. But that's enough about me talking about the outside of it. We need to jump in now. We're going to talk about how this vehicle performs on the road, the space on the inside, both front and back, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for a 2020 Ford Fusion plug-in hybrid titanium. Get the most out of your Ford Fusion plug-in hybrid with the EV Duty Smart Home Charger. Not only can you control and set access times through the app, but you can manage everything from scheduling to even see how much consumption your vehicle is charging while you're using it. You can now access public chargers through the EV Duty app, giving you more power to use your electric vehicle no matter where you are. For more information about the EV Duty Smart Home Charger, visit elmec.ca. You know, I'm very excited to be driving the Ford Fusion plug-in hybrid today because I actually missed out on the Fusion a couple years ago. I didn't quite have the capacity at the time to be able to drive. That was actually the Sport model, the one that can jump over potholes, which is pretty cool. But man, I got behind the wheel of this Fusion and I just was instantly reminded of why sedans are so good. And yeah, I like big cars, but there's something about the midsize segment, it's really the sweet spot when it comes to size and road feel. The ride on this car is really good. We'll talk about that more in a couple minutes, but let's talk about the important numbers when it comes to people who are buying fuel efficient vehicles, plug-in hybrids like this. We've done our 100-kilometer test loop and we have some very interesting numbers to go with. We did that in 3.4 liters per 100 kilometers. We did 56.9 of those kilometers in electric mode, in EV mode. Now, the first 37.4 kilometers were fully electric before we switched over to the gas. So that's an important number that we like to talk about. It's the sort of best range you can get on a full charge. So it's not quite 40 kilometers and it's not quite as good as what we saw with the Kia Optima plug-in hybrid from a couple years ago. Now, that vehicle wasn't fully loaded, though I'd say the kit was probably pretty similar. That one has a tiny bit better battery, and that would have done it, I think we did like 39, maybe 42 kilometers, but that was before we started doing our test loop. So I can't really use that number because it's not the exact same road test that we did. That's why this is such an important number to use, because it's the exact same route every single time. Now, also, with that information in mind, we had the HVAC settings to 22 degrees Celsius. It was about 24 degrees Celsius outside. So yes, air conditioning was on. I also had the ventilated seats on as well, which was a nice plus to have. You could have turned off the AC if you wanted to, but I kept it on. So those are some important numbers to keep in mind. Now, the other things that we like to talk about when it comes to electric vehicles is how the charging system works. There are a number of things that make this car somewhat unique. You can charge the car and use the air conditioning system. You can push the accessory power, but you can also turn the car on completely while it's plugged in, or you can actually leave the car on and plug it in. So if it's a hot day out, you want to maybe sit around, maybe your family goes into the mall while you're sitting outside, you plug in, you want to keep the air conditioning running and get some of that charge back during the time that they're gone. Whatever the reason may be, you can do it. Nice features there. Not every car allows you to do it. Now, one of the negatives is the charger port does not lock. So when you plug the vehicle in, it can be unplugged by anybody, even if the car is locked. Now, we already talked about how the mechanism works with the little flap that opens up when you want to charge it. I can see that breaking easily down the road, but as I mentioned, the important thing is it doesn't lock, which is a bit of a problem. I think that that should be a standard feature across all plug-ins and electric vehicles. Now, the other thing I've noticed that is a negative comes with the gauge cluster. It shows you on the left and the right side different information depending on what you want. If the battery runs out, if you get to 0, the battery indicator goes away. Now, I don't know why they would do that. I think it should be on all the time, even if it's empty. It should have a gauge just like the fuel to show you whether or not you have any range with that electric battery left. When I picked up the vehicle, there was no battery there, even though it said I had a couple kilometers of EV range. It wasn't until I came home, fully charged the car, that it came back. Now, I can tell you it will show up even if the car isn't fully charged, but for some reason, once you've drained it out, it just removes it completely. To be fair though, you'll never be able to charge the car up just driving it around, but I think that that's something that they could fix. Another thing too, even though that's not there, I do like on the outside where the charging port is, it'll more or less give you a percentage, at least in quarter increments, of how charged the car is with the little blue ring. That's a nice little thing to have, especially if you have the car parked somewhere that you can see it and you're curious to know, oh, is it ready to go? It will be completely blue if it's ready to go, and it'll tell you, if it's a quarter of the way, halfway, things like that. That is a nice thing to have. Some of them put them on the dashboard. It's not as easily seeable from wherever you may be, and again, you might not be able to see it no matter where you park, but at least in some situations you'll have a better idea. Now, what makes this car very good? First of all, the drive and ride. Even the interior road noise is really good on this. Just went over some train tracks there, barely felt it, barely heard it, and even on the highway the road noise is very manageable. Now, the space in here, that's where you'll start to wonder which one you should really go with, either between this and the Clarity, because the driver space here, even the rear seat space, very good. It comes down to that trunk. As I mentioned, it is significantly smaller than the regular Ford Fusion, and that's because that's where the batteries are. But overall, it is a comfortable car. Visibility is very good, despite this being a very old car now. First model year was 2013, and here we are in 2020. It has not really changed too much, especially in the last couple of years, but it's still a handsome looking car. The interior here works, okay, it's not as modern, but I think a lot of people will appreciate the fact that the infotainment system is actually built into the dashboard. It's not sitting on top like an afterthought, and honestly, it works out really well. It's a nice interior. It's not great though, and that's the thing. If it comes down between this and the Honda Clarity, I'm going to take the Clarity, unless price is the absolute factor for me, because the Clarity did a lot of things really good, but the biggest selling point for the Clarity was the fact that it had that bigger battery. You could go about 85 kilometers or so fully electric, so you're getting less than half with this, but the rest of the car is really good though. I mean, I don't need a ton of trunk space. For me, it's mostly comfort and how the car feels on the road. It's not super peppy, even if you have it fully charged to get all 195 horsepower. And honestly, 129 pound-feet of torque is pretty low for a plug-in. It's actually about the lowest in the Fusion lineup. Even if you go with the other engines, they all kind of have more power in the torque department, but you're not buying it for that. You're buying this because you want the fuel economy. The thing that disappoints me the most really has nothing to do with the car. The car works really well. Even though it's dated as a plug-in hybrid, this is a very competent vehicle on the road. My thing is Ford's just killing it too soon. They have the potential, especially with what they're doing with the Mustang Mach-E. There's so much potential to bring some of the technology over onto a vehicle like this and improve it with a new generation, new updated infotainment, a little bit more modern design on the inside, better battery, and maybe a little bit more power out of the engine, they could have something really compelling. So I'm hoping that Ford will change its mind and they will continue to sell. Maybe not the regular Fusion here. I can understand that that's maybe not a viable option to continue with, but if they could at least continue with the plug-in hybrid version and build this into a fantastic competitor to the Honda Clarity, then we'll have something seriously fun. Because right now the Clarity's pretty much sitting on its own in the high-range plug-in hybrid world. Everything else is like this, about a mid-range, 40-ish kilometers or so, and there needs to be more competition. Ford had the potential, and I hope that there's somebody listening there at the Ford Motor Company who is watching this video and will take that information to heart and think about it, because you've got the formula. It's almost there. You just need to put a little bit of time and effort into a new generation to make this incredible.